Hi. Okay, I'm still setting up the computer. Just checking before we get started. Can everybody hear me okay?
I can't hear you. I
Oh, you
can't.
can. Uh-oh.
Mhm.
Let's see. Can other people hear me?
Let's see.
Hmm. If anyone
Mm.
else can say in the comments. Okay, Grace, you can hear me? Thank you. I think I'm unmuted, so if anyone else can pop on really quick and see if you can hear me, that would be great. Might just be connecting. Okay, perfect. Cool. So, hi everyone. My name is Alyssa, and I'm a flight instructor for Girls Love to Fly, and then a other Part 141 school. Um, and I'll just kind of like get to know you guys really quick. I see a lot of familiar faces, so I was just gonna check in with everybody while people are still coming into the meeting. Um, is everyone here working on private? Is anyone here not working on private? Nope. Okay. So pretty much everyone is on private. Um, Perfect. Okay, so we know one more person to join. Okay. So just confirming before I get started, I think I got everybody. You guys can hear me. Can someone unmute themselves and just double check that I can hear them?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. I'm on like a really, really old computer and it's laggy, so I just wanted to make sure that it works. Um, so today I was going to talk about airspace, which is a pretty like um you learn it like pretty early on in private pilot, so a lot of this information you might already know from something your instructor taught you, but hopefully today I'll go into like a little bit more detail. So maybe I'll say something that is new information to you, or at least that's the hope. Um, so with airspace overall, one thing that I like to tell my students about airspace is that the main purpose of it is, or the main reason why we have all these different types of airspace is mostly for the purpose of protecting instrument traffic or for incorporating instrument traffic into the system or military traffic when we start talking about like special use airspaces. So once you start like looking at airspace from that perspective, it starts to make a lot more sense. And especially when we start to talk about VFR weather minimums for like the legal airspace minimums, which I'll go into more detail about. Um, think of thinking about it from the perspective of it's designed to keep IFR traffic safe. A lot of this airspace will start to make a lot more sense. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go on to Sky Vector. Um, let's see here. Oh gosh, this is being confusing. I believe I'm going to share on here. Okay, so bear with me for a second. Um, okay, can everyone see my screen on Sky Vector here? Yes? No?
Yes, now I can.
Not
Now
yet.
I
Okay.
There
can.
it is.
Once again, very, very old laptop, so I appreciate you guys bearing with me. Um, you guys probably know, like I always do everything on my iPad. So like I just have like this janky 15-year-old laptop, for these specifically for these Zooms. So, um, so I was just gonna start from the top. So we have class Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta Echo airspace, Delta Echo Golf, and then I'm going to start going into like some of the special use airspace if I have time. So just starting from the top, I'm going to go from like busiest to least busy airspace. Um, but I'll just start with class Alpha, not because it's the busiest, but just because it's like um like it's what most IFR operations are in. So, class alpha is anywhere above 18,000 feet, and you are required to be on an instrument flight plan in order to enter class alpha airspace. It is not notated anywhere on the chart. You just know that class alpha airspace exists anywhere above 18,000 feet. So, MSL. So I don't really focus too much on it for my private pilots. You just need to know that class alpha exists and that it is IFR traffic only. So it doesn't really have any weather minimums because obviously you can go through clouds if you're on an IFR flight plan. And you need to be talking to ATC and get a clearance, basically the IFR flight plan. So I'll move on from that. And once again, a lot of this might be repeat from stuff you guys already know, but the next busiest airspace would be class Bravo. And Bravo, like I think Bravo class B equals busy. That's how I always remember it. And that will be the airspace that's 1 second, so it's all notamed. That'll be all the airspace that sorry, 1 second. I'm trying to find you guys another Bravo that's not notamed. It'll be the airspace that is like, think of your busiest airports like LAX, JFK, San Francisco's one. Okay, I was trying to find you guys another one, but apparently 1 second. If you bear with me, I'm gonna find you guys another class Bravo that's a little easier to see. Okay, LAX. Okay, so Bravo is denoted on the chart, and you know where it is because of the solid blue lines surrounding our busiest airports. So here's a good example of Los Angeles Bravo. So they usually span about 30 miles wide, but every Bravo has different dimensions to kind of account for the terrain near it, or not the terrain, but like the airspace near it. But generally they're about 30 miles wide. And they're kind of hard to see. Can you guys see like the blue lines here? There's a bunch of different blue lines that span about 30 miles, and all of that is class Bravo. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in a second. But the point of class Bravo is, or the requirements to enter class Bravo is to receive a two-way explicit radio communication from air traffic control, which this is the only airspace where you need to hear explicit clearance. So like you need to hear air traffic control say your tail number. So for example, Cessna 1234 cleared into the Bravo airspace. We'll get into with Charlie and Delta airspace, you only need two-way radio communications. So it's kind of like a game of Simon Says, with like class Delta and Charlie. They could say like Cessna 1234 stand by, but because they said your tail number, you're technically allowed into the airspace. But because class Bravo airspace is so massive, or just busy, the controllers want to make sure that they can monitor the rate of traffic coming in by giving you that explicit clearance. Another thing about class Bravo is that it goes up to 10,000 feet MSL, which is really important to realize. Sorry, 1 second. I don't know if you guys can see, but half of my screen is getting taken up by like, okay, cool. I had like a pop-up, so I wasn't able to see what I was showing you guys. So now I can actually zoom in more. So class Bravo airspace goes up to 10,000 feet MSL, which is really important to note because a lot of other airspace is based off of AGL or above ground level, where class Bravo is mean sea level up to 10,000 feet, except for like Denver because it's already so high. I think theirs is like up to 14,000. But if you look, it has a bunch of these like offshoots. Like here's one where Class Bravo starts at 2,000 feet and goes up to 10,000 feet. Um, and if you look around, you can see here Class Bravo starts at 8,000 feet and goes up to 10,000 feet. But usually there's this surface area around the airport itself that goes from the surface to 10,000. So for all Bravos, there's usually this surface to 10,000 inner circle, and then you'll see these shelves where Bravo will start at different altitudes. Like here, for example, 7,000 to 10,000, and then go up until it hits 10,000 feet. And then I'll go into specific weather minimums with all these airspaces in a second. But basically, what to know is Class Bravo is the busiest. You need an explicit clearance as well as a mode C transponder, so altitude reporting transponder, and ADSB out, so that air traffic control can really keep tabs on you, which makes sense because once again, it is super busy. Another thing to note about these Class Bravo airspaces is if you look really closely, you see this ring called the Mode C veil. Hang on, I'll zoom in. So around Class Bravos, you'll see this ring, this magenta ring. And what that means is within 30 miles of the Class Bravo, air traffic control still wants to kind of keep tabs on anyone near it. So it requires a Mode C transponder and ADSB out. Does anyone have any questions on what a transponder or ADSB is? Speak up. Oh, okay. Or you can type in the comments. Um, but yeah, I'll go back to that if anyone wants me to explain that. Um, and then one other thing I wanted to mention about the Class Bravo airspaces is because sometimes they are really chaotic and hard to navigate. Oh, I just got the chat. Okay, thank you, Marissa, for asking about ADSB. So a transponder is so that air traffic control can see your position and location, and it's based off of your frequency to like or it's like kind of basically radar communicating with the ground station. Whereas ADSB is more it's the same thing. It's so that air traffic control can see your location, but it's more based off of like GPS. So it's a little bit more advanced than a transponder, but both ADSB out and Mode C transponder is so that air traffic control can see your location and altitude. So that's the point of it. We have ADSB out, and then that's how air traffic control can see your position. And then ADSB in is how we can see other planes in our cockpit. So like whenever you connect to ADSB in, like a Sentry, for example, that's how you can see where other planes are, like on your iPad, for example. So that's just the way for ATC to provide traffic separation. Another thing about let me zoom out real quick. Another thing about Class Bravo airspaces is, as you can see, that they're like kind of chaotic. So there's something called a TAC chart. And let me see if I can pull it up on SkyVector. Los Angeles TAC chart. So Class Bravos specifically have something called a TAC chart. And it just simplifies the airspace and shows preferred routes. For some reason, SkyVector isn't showing me, so let me just Google a TAC chart so you can see it. Okay, yeah, terminal area chart. And basically it shows you like specific preferred routes where if you were to TAC charts, TAC. Um, so here's a good photo. I love Bold Method, by the way, if any of you guys are trying to study. It has really great articles for private pilots and instrument pilots. But here's a TAC chart. So they're basically zoomed in images of Bravo airspaces. And they show you like these little arrows, which are preferred routes where if you wanted to transition through a Class Bravo airspace, it'll show you how air traffic control wants you to transition. And they'll have a lot of notes. Like here it says Seahawk transition, Seattle runways 16 in use, 1,500 to 2,000 MSL. So it just has like some more detailed instructions. And then it all shows you, let's see, this one is not a good photo, but it'll show you these little areas here where it shows you where the airline arrivals and departures are Federal Airways. Okay. Yes, I will get to that. Thank you. So it just shows you where the airliners are most likely arriving and departing from so that you can kind of plan your route. So that's good to look into. Let me go ahead and go back through. Okay. And then someone was asking me about Federal Airways. Do you mean these little Victor Airways, these blue lines? Oops, sorry. I'm zooming in real quick so you can see. Were you wondering about these guys? Yes, okay. So these Victor Airways, this sectional doesn't really do a great job of showing it, but they are airways going off of VORs, where they're not super prevalent now, just because with the how popular GPS has become. But when we were doing like a lot more VOR to VOR navigation, these airways were super popular. And we still do use them, like a similar concept for instrument flying. But it's good to know that if you're flying one of these airways, there could still be a lot of traffic converging. So you want to make sure that you're really scanning and looking for traffic. But one interesting thing about these airways is you see they're all off of VOR radials. So like, for example, this airway, Victor 107, is off of this VOR here, the Fillmore VOR on the 148 radial. And something that I see my students get confused with is they would think that this would be like the 107 radial off of the VOR, but that's just the name of the airway. You would be navigating the airway off of the 148 radial of the Fillmore VOR. So yeah, they're just ways to navigate. And a common check ride question I've seen is like, you just want to really make sure that you're scanning for traffic when you're traveling on one of those airways because they might have increased congestion. But if you have any more questions about that, please let me know in the chat. I think I covered everything I wanted to about Class Bravo. And then once again, I'm going to come back around in a second and explain more so like the weather minimums and try to make those make more sense. So next I'm going to go ahead and talk about Class Charlie airspace. I wish I was doing this on my iPad so I could just pull up my ForeFlight. I feel very like clumsy clicking around on SkyVector to show you guys things. So Class Charlie airspace would be the next busiest airspace below Bravo. And I'm trying to find a good like stereotypical one. These ones are all kind of weirdly shaped. But Class Charlie airspaces would be more of like your Sacramento International Airport or like a large regional airport. I'm not sure if all of you guys are from the California area, but they would be not. So like if you think of like your LAX, your JFK, like Chicago, those would be like top tier busiest airports, where the Class Charlies are the airports that get like a lot of your regional planes. Um, but they're not quite busy enough to need all of the stuff that Bravo needs. So let me go ahead and type in a good example of a Class Charlie. So Class Charlies are denoted by this solid magenta line. And once again, Class Charlie and Bravo airspace is kind of like tailored to the specific airspace it surrounds. So if you can see, like this Charlie airspace has like a cutout right here to accommodate the airports around it. But typically, Class Charlie airspaces go, they have this inner circle that starts at the surface and goes up to 4,000 feet. AGL. So that's why this one says 4,100, because it's 4,000 feet above the ground and the elevation is 100 feet. So this inner circle start usually as a radius of about 5 miles. And then this outer circle here generally is 1,200 AGL and goes up to 4,000 AGL. And this outer circle extends another 5 miles. So in total, once again, these can kind of be tailored to the specific airspace, but the dimension of the Class Charlie airspaces are about a 10 mile radius with an inner circle that goes to the surface and goes up to 4,000 feet, and an outer circle that starts at 1,200 AGL and goes up to that 4,000 foot mark. So just like Class Bravo airspace, you need to have two-way radio communication in order to enter. However, this airspace, you don't need that explicit clearance. So this is kind of what I was talking about, where if they say your tail number, then you are cleared in, unless they explicitly say, and I've had this happen to me before, like if they say like Cessna 1234, stay clear of the Charlie, then obviously you can't enter. But if you're in communication with a controller in Class Charlie, you're allowed in. And another thing that I did not mention with the Bravos, but the Charlies is the same way, is if you were flying, let's say that you just wanted to transition through this Class Charlie, you would not contact like the Sacramento International Tower. You would contact the approach controller. So you would look for a box like this, and you would contact NorCal Approach on 127.4, for example, to get clearance through the Charlie, or here 125.25. And it's the same thing with the Bravos. Another thing about the Charlies is that you also need the ADS-B and the Mode C transponder so that the controller can see you as well. And then another note that I always like to tell my students is if you're trying to figure out if a airport is usually towered or untowered, I will look at now this is like a rule of thumb, like airports can have temporary towers, but generally airports with control towers are going to have blue runways. So like this airport shows blue runways. This airport shows blue runways, and I'll explain that in a second. Whereas airports with magenta runways are usually untowered, unless of course there is a temporary tower or the tower closes. But that's a good like way of thinking about it too. So next, I'm gonna go ahead and does anyone have any questions so far? I know I'm kind of zooming through it. I'm gonna circle back around in a second. Okay. If anyone has questions, please mention in the chat. But I'm going to go ahead and go on to Delta Airspace. So Delta airspaces are usually our busier training airports. They might get usually one or two large airlines a day, just generally speaking. But class Deltas are our busy training airports that might get business jets and stuff, but are not busy enough to need a full-time tower. So class Delta airspaces are shown by these dashed navy lines here. And for dimensions, they're usually about 5 miles of radius. And if you've noticed, when I was talking about Charlie and Bravo airspaces, Charlie and Bravo have multiple tiers or layers of the airspace, whereas class Delta airspaces are super simple. They just have that one circle usually. That's 5 miles as a radius and go up to 2,500 feet AGL or above ground level. And the requirements for entering a class Delta airspace are two-way radio communication, but you actually do not need a transponder or ADS-B to enter into that class Delta airspace. Now, one interesting thing about the Delta is that they do close at night. So if you're trying to find more information for what time the airport closes, we have, let me see if I can Google it real quick on the same screen. Have you guys looked at chart supplements before? Maybe. Okay. Sorry, I know the audio is a little confusing if you guys want to type it in the chat. But anyways, if you're ever confused about what time a class Delta airport closes, let me pull up the one or the one I was just looking at. And you can find these on your ForeFlight too. Okay, so here would be an example of the chart supplement. Maybe not. Hang on. Okay, pulling it up on here. This is not very user-friendly. Okay, basically the chart supplement is a document that shows you all of the kind of nitty-gritty information about a specific airport. So it'll tell you the runway lengths, sometimes noise abatement procedures, what services the airport has, what lights it has. And once again, you can find it on ForeFlight. I'm kind of taking the path of most resistance looking at the FAA website. But here's the one for Mather, the class Delta airspace that I was just looking at. So it has a bunch of really useful information about the airport. For example, how to convert the local time to UT or Zulu time, what services they have, what fuel they have, any weird noise abatement or airport rules. But specifically, if you're looking for what time the tower is operated, you would go down to the chart supplement and see this line here to see when the tower is in operation. So that's good to know. And every once in a while, there will be NOTAMs or little memos posted about the towers being inoperative or operating at different hours. So that's good to always check before you go to a towered airport. I know there's been a couple times where I'll arrive super late at night and have to look up if the tower's still open. Anyways, back to that little sidetrack. When the tower does close at a class Delta airspace, usually it'll tell you a CTAF. So for example, I believe when Mather is closed, you would communicate just like a normal untowered class echo and Gulf airspace on this frequency, the 122.95 frequency. And then when the tower does close, it reverts back to either a class echo or a class Gulf airspace, whatever the default airspace would be underneath it, which kind of leads me into talking about class echo airspace. I think I just got someone else in the waiting room. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions so far before I go into echo airspace? Oh. Okay. So class echo airspace is kind of tricky to explain. So in a way, it's not notated on the chart. Class echo airspace is assumed to be everywhere. It starts at 1,200 feet AGL and goes up until it hits the whatever airspace is above it. So like, for example, like right here in the middle of nowhere, class echo starts at 1,200 feet. Like right here, class echo starts at 1,200 feet. Basically anywhere you look, class echo will start at 1,200 feet and then go up until it hits another airspace. Unless of course, like another airspace exists above it. Like for example, if we were looking back at the Mather airspace, because it goes to the surface, class echo cannot exist underneath it, but otherwise class echo exists everywhere starting at 1,200 feet. So the exception to where class echo airspace will start at a different altitude. One exception would be if you see this like magenta shaded line, that means that class echo begins at 700 feet instead of 1,200 feet. So just to clarify, outside of this shaded magenta, class echo starts at 1,200 feet. Inside of this shaded magenta, it starts at 700 feet. The other example of where class echo might start at a different altitude would be if we see this magenta dashed line. So this magenta dashed line means that class echo begins at the surface instead of 1,200 feet, which can be kind of easy to be confused with class Charlie airspace, which is solid magenta. So this is a Charlie, this is echo starting at 1,200 feet. Also, fun little side note, I think this is a good, like I feel like I didn't know this until later on. If you see an airport and the runways are denoted as like a rectangle versus other airports that are denoted as a circle, do you guys know what that means? Like for example, Mather shows the runways as rectangles, whereas like Cameron Park would be shown inside of a circle.
Something about how long they are.
Yeah, exactly. I think specifically it's like a super random number. Like if the runway is over, I think 8,069 feet or something, it'll be shown as a rectangle. If it's a short runway or shorter than 8,069 feet, it'll be shown in this little circle. So that's what that means. Really good job, Grace. That is exactly it. So anyways, class echo has that 1,200 feet where it starts at, and then 700 feet inside of this shaded magenta, and it starts at the surface inside of this dashed magenta. And class echo will go up to either basically class Echo airspace will go up until it bonks into another airspace. So like, for example, out here in the middle of nowhere where there's no other airspace denoted, at least, class Echo would start at 1,200 feet and go up until it hits class Alpha airspace at 18,000 feet. But as another example, inside of McClellan, which I know a lot of you guys fly out of McClellan, class Echo would start at the surface and then go up until it hits the overlying airspace, which would be this class Charlie at 1,600 feet. Now the last airspace that I was going to talk about is class Gulf airspace, and that is the only truly like uncontrolled airspace. And this starts to like get into talk about weather minimum, so I'll get into that soon. But class Gulf airspace exists underneath all the other airspaces. So as I was talking about out here, for example, where there's no other real airspace denoted, class Echo, we can assume starts at 1,200 feet. So then that means that Gulf would start at the surface and go up to 1,200 feet. Another example would be near Auburn. Class Echo would start at 700 feet because we have that shaded magenta. So that means that class Gulf would exist under it, under that 700 feet. So now I'll kind of start to talk about weather minimums. And this is where it kind of ties back to what I said at the beginning of the lesson, which was weather minimums do not exist to keep us safe. They're intended to keep IFR traffic safe, or traffic that is like popping in and out of clouds. So traffic that is on an instrument flight plan, it's air traffic control's responsibility to keep them safe from IFR and VFR traffic when they're in the clouds. So these different airspaces that I talked about have different weather minimums or distances from clouds. Yes, Kelly, if you want, I'll send my email in the, actually I'll send my email now. And if anyone has any like requests for grounds that they want to do later, or if they have any like requests for cheat sheets, I can send that to you. Okay, I just sent my email. Cool. So class Golf, or sorry, starting with class Bravo airspace. So interestingly, class Bravo airspace, let's see if I can draw this. Class Bravo airspace has like less restrictive weather minimums than some of the other airspaces. So class Bravo airspace, you only need 3 statute miles visibility and to remain clear of clouds. So I'm just going to put, actually, I'll just type out clear of clouds. Okay. So class Bravo airspace, you just need 3 statute miles visibility and you just cannot enter a cloud. Ignore the 500 feet below and horizontal. I'll get to that. And the reason why in class Bravo airspace it's less restrictive on the weather minimums is because the controllers already have so much ability to see all the traffic with the mode C transponder and ADS-B requirements. And they also have the ability to kind of like allow how many planes they let in at a time through that explicit clearance rule. That they've kind of lowered the weather minimums. So you just need 3 statute miles clear of clouds. Now for, I'm just gonna type it. Now for class C, class Charlie, Delta, Echo under 10,000 feet. I'll get to what happens over 10,000 feet. Under 10,000. oh my gosh, 10,000 feet. Sorry, so for anytime you're in class Charlie, Delta, Echo, or Echo under 10,000 feet, you need 3 statute miles clear of clouds. And then I like to think of it as the 152 rule. So 1,000 feet above, 2,000 feet horizontal, and 500 feet below the clouds. So I'm just going to put 152 rule, and I'll explain what that means. I'm going to put my beautiful writing in the corner for a second. Okay, so why this 152 rule exists is because if you imagine this jet here on an instrument flight plan popping in and out of clouds, air traffic control wants to make sure that, one, you have 3 statute miles visibility, but if you can imagine, oh, Marissa, so the 152 rule is for weather minimums, you need to stay 3 miles clear of clouds and 1,000 feet above the clouds, 500 feet below the clouds, and 2,000 feet away from clouds horizontally. So I'll explain that a little more. So the reason why you need to stay 1,000 feet above clouds is because if you can think about how quickly jets and airlines on like IFR flight plans can climb, you don't want to have the jet like popping. My little like makeshift animation thing here. You don't want to see the cloud like or the jet popping up through a cloud and you being barely above the cloud and then it climbing into you, because jets have pretty good climb rates. And now the reason why the 2,000 feet horizontal rule is also pretty significant is because once again, these weather minimums exist to keep you from hitting other planes that are popping in and out of clouds. And if you can imagine this jet popping through the cloud at like 250 knots, and you going on the other side of that cloud, you would have the fastest closing distance and potential for hitting each other. So that's why the 2,000 feet horizontal is bigger than the 1,000 feet above or 500 feet below the clouds. And then once again, 500 feet below, the reason for that requirement is if the jet is descending through the clouds. So if the jet is descending through the clouds, they don't want to have the jet pop out and hit you if you're below the clouds. The reason why it's only 500 feet versus the 1,000 feet above, the way that I've heard some people explain it, is when jets are descending usually on an IFR flight plan, or just any plane that's on an IFR flight plan, it's on a stable 3-degree glide slope. So it's not getting that like crazy, like couple thousand feet per minute climb rate, which would be the risk if you were having it climb through the clouds. So that would be class Charlie, Delta, and Echo under 10,000 feet weather minimums. Just to reiterate, class Bravo airspace is just at 3 statute miles clear of clouds. And now class Golf is kind of, I like to think of it as the Wild West as far as weather minimums. There's not really any instrument traffic in class Golf airspace. So the FAA has much less strict weather minimums. So in class Golf airspace under 1,200 feet, which is pretty much when whenever you're in class Golf, for the most part, you'll be under 1,200 feet. During the day, all you need is 1 statute mile visibility, or sorry, all you need is to maintain clear of clouds. So let me just write it up here. Class Golf under 1,200 feet, you just need to remain clear of clouds. Okay, so class golf under 12,000 feet, you're just not allowed to have any part of your aircraft touch a cloud. And that's just, once again, because you don't really have to worry about that instrument traffic popping in and out of clouds. So it's a lot less restrictive. Once again, this should not serve as your, like, I should go fly with only, with just remaining clear of clouds. You should definitely work with your CFI and develop like stricter personal minimums, but this is just what is legal. And now, I'll put this on in the chat. Oh, sorry. I've had a really long day. I might have said it was 1 mile clear of clouds in class golf during the day, under 10,000 feet or under 1,200 feet, but it's actually just clear of clouds. And I'll send you guys a cheat sheet. Actually, here, I'll Google a cheat sheet really quick and you guys can take a photo of it to reference. So, airspace weather minimums. Cheat sheet. Okay, here, I'm gonna Google this so that you guys want to follow along. Okay. Okay, so here you go. If you guys want to follow along, can you see this okay? So in class golf airspace, during the day, you just need, oh, sorry, 1 statute mile clear of clouds. And then at night, it's 3 statute miles and 1,000 feet above, 500 feet below, 2,000 feet horizontal from clouds. And now there's very few cases where you would be in class golf airspace between 1,200 and 10,000 feet. But if you are, it would be 1 statute mile. It would be that 1 statute mile, 1,000 feet above, 500 feet below, 2,000 feet horizontal during the day. But at night, it reverts to 3 statute mile and then that 152 rule, just like how class Charlie, Delta, and Bravo airspace would be, and Echo below 10,000 feet. Now, one thing to note is that in class Golf and Echo airspace, anytime you're above 10,000 feet, the weather minimums change to 5 statute miles visibility, 1,000 feet above clouds, 1,000 feet below clouds, and 1 mile horizontal from clouds. So now the reason why these weather minimums change above 10,000 feet in class Echo and Golf airspace is because the under 10,000 feet, there's this rule that you have to be going below 250 knots. But above 10,000 feet, that rule goes away. So the weather minimums increase because if a plane is going, for example, 400 knots, you have a much faster closing rate than if you were going like that under 250 knot rule. So one thing to note too is if you are going above 10,000 feet with that 5,000 feet or 5 mile visibility rule, and then 1,000 feet above 1,000 feet horizontal, a lot of students tend to think that this last one, or sorry, 1,000 feet above, 1,000 feet below, and then a lot of students tend to think that this last one means 1,000 feet horizontal above 10,000 feet, but the minimums actually go up to 1 mile horizontal from clouds. And the reason is because if the planes are going much faster than 250 knots, they have significantly faster closing distance if they're popping in and out of clouds. So they want to make sure that planes have at least 1 mile to see and avoid other traffic. So that concludes pretty much my discussion about like airspace itself, between class alpha through echo airspace, or class alpha through golf airspace. I had a couple questions for you guys about specifically, let me see if I can get this back up here. I had a couple questions for you guys about like being able to apply the information that we just went over. 1 second, if I can pull back up my sky vector. Does anyone have any questions so far? Cool. And I'm so sorry. I had such a long day instructing, so I was like tripping over my words. So bear with me. If I said anything confusing, just let me know. I'm waiting for my previous screen to go away. But have any of you guys played the rocket ship game with your instructors? Have you heard of the rocket ship game? No? Okay. So we're going to play the rocket ship game, which is, okay, no. So cool. I was just reading the chats. So you guys can volunteer. You can type it out in the chat to answer my questions, but it might be easier for you guys if you just want to unmute yourself and answer the question. So we're going to start off. I'm trying to find a nice, easy example to start off with. Okay. So if we were right here, oops, let's see. If we were right here inside of Salinas, or Marina Airport, and we went straight up from the ground, what airspaces would we hit? So if anyone wants to answer, what airspace would we be in at the ground at Marina Airport? If anyone wants to unmute yourself or answer.
C? Or I mean, yeah, C?
So the C airspace, you're correct. This little magenta line here is Class C airspace. But if you see, this Class C airspace starts at 1,500 feet because you're in this little outer shelf. So if anyone wants to guess what airspace we would be on at the ground, feel free to answer.
Is it golf?
Exactly, yeah. So golf airspace starts at the surface. You're totally right. Golf exists underneath everything else. And what altitude would it go up to?
1,200?
So normally it would go up to 1,200 until it hits echo. You're totally right. Except for it's inside of this magenta shaded line, which is super hard to see. So I know it's kind of like a trick question. So what was that magenta line mean? What altitude would class echo start at?
700.
Exactly. Good. Okay. Perfect. So Marina would be golf up until 700, and then it would be echo until what altitude?
1,500.
Perfect. Yeah. And then it would be Charlie. And then it would be Charlie up until what altitude? I'll give you guys a hint.
4,200.
Exactly. Yeah. So it would be class golf until 700 because of this magenta vignette or the shaded line. Then it would be echo until 1,500. Then Charlie at 4,200. And then above Charlie, it would go up until class alpha, which would be that 18,000 feet. And then fun fact, above class alpha, it actually goes back to echo but it goes back to echo at like 60,000 feet. So that's not like super relevant information. Okay. Now what if we were at Spreckles? A little waypoint here. Okay. So if we started on the ground at Spreckles and went straight up, what airspace would we hit? If anyone wants to volunteer. If not, I'll go over it.
Would it be Class D airspace?
Yeah, it would be Class D airspace. And then up until what altitude?
2,500.
Yeah, exactly, 2,500. And then one fun fact is sometimes on the sectionals you'll see like this 2,500 with the minus sign in front of it. That minus sign means that it goes up to like 2,499 or 2,499 feet. It took a lot of thought after a long day. 2,499 feet instead of 2,500. So yeah, and then it would hit class X or class Charlie at 2,500, correct? Okay, cool. You guys are good. Let me do one more, and then I had one other quick thing I wanted to go over. Let me see if I can get into class Bravo. Let me find a less chaotic class Bravo. Okay. SF or SLAX. Okay. So let's say that we are planning a flight from what is Van Nuys. So it looks like Van Nuys is it's really hard to see, but it's like a delta under a Charlie, it looks like. And let's say we wanted to go from Van Nuys to, actually, let me find a little bit of an easier one. Okay, let's say that we wanted to go from this San Gabriel Valley Airport, this class Delta airspace right here, and we wanted to go to this Fullerton Municipal Airport, but we wanted to avoid any class Bravo airspace. For some reason, we don't want to talk to any class Bravo controller. What altitude, if we went straight from here to here, would we have to go to if we wanted to avoid the class Bravo? Which it's kind of hard to see. So if you guys need to like look at it for a second.
Is it 10,000? Would we have to go over it?
Oh, I didn't even consider that as a possibility. Technically, you're right. If you went over 10,000, you wouldn't be in class Bravo. But it does look like there's a way to go under it and not have to be in class Bravo either. I'll give you guys a hint.
Under 4,000?
Yeah, so 4,000 in this little, I don't even know what shape that is. If you stay under 4,000 under this shape, that would keep you clear of the class Bravo. And then it looks like there's another shape. What is this? 4,000. And then, yeah, it looks like there's another like 6,000 foot square. So you are completely correct. If you stay under 4,000, you should be able to transit the area without talking to a Bravo controller. Now, it's probably still a good idea to talk to a controller. They might be able to help you out, but it's good to like be able to read like how to go under certain airspaces. Now, if we were doing the rocket ship game again, let me find one other example. Okay, this one's super confusing. So if we were in Chino, let's say that we were in Chino and we just went straight up, what airspaces would we hit from the ground? So we'll just start. What airspace is Chino Airport?
Delta,
Exactly, yeah. Chino's a delta. And then what airspace is it under?
Charlie.
Exactly. So it would be a delta up until what altitude?
2,700?
Yes, kind of, yes. So it'd be 27 in theory, and then that little minus sign again means that it goes up to 2,699 feet, and then that class Charlie starts at that 2,700 feet. Cool. And then what happens above the class Charlie if you just kept going straight up? So the class Charlie starts at 2,700 and goes up to 5,000 feet. What would happen if you were over Corona Airport at 5,000 feet?
Echo?
Exactly, yeah. It goes back to Echo airspace. And then it goes up until it hits that 1,800 feet, which then it would be Alpha, up to 6,000 if you really, or 60,000 if you really wanted to get crazy, and then it would go back up to Echo.
Can you
Um,
explain, sorry, can you explain
Sure.
why it turns into echo
Um, so you mean above 60,000 feet?
or above Charlie?
Oh, yeah. So, I was just explaining earlier that any airspace, pretty much unless it indicates otherwise, is class Echo starting at 1,200 feet, and it remains as Echo up until it hits the next airspace above it, which would be, in this case, like since there's no other airspace denoted, it would be Echo starting at 1,200 feet, going up until it hits 18,000 feet or class Alpha airspace.
Okay, got it.
And then I know you kind of joined after I discussed this. Do you know, like, do you remember what this shaded magenta means?
Oh man, the shaded magenta inside the vignette. I want to say no, I don't remember.
Okay, cool. So that just means that it lowers the floor of Echo. So Echo would just start at 700 instead of 1,200. And then as I was explaining, just to refresh, there's that dashed magenta here, which means that Echo starts at the surface. Now, one thing that I wanted to explain that I didn't really get to is the reason why Echo has these weird shapes where like this weird shape, for example, where there's this whole section that Echo starts at 700 feet as opposed to 1,200 feet is once again to protect instrument traffic. So usually when Echo is lowered to 700 feet via this shaded magenta line, it's because there's like an instrument approach where traffic popping in and out of the clouds, or they're just in the clouds, would be descending to a lower altitude than usual. Like, so for example, to this airport. Sorry, there's like a really loud motorcycle. So if you guys remember class golf back here. So if you guys remember class golf airspace under 12,000 feet is 1,000 feet, or sorry, 1 mile statute visibility, 1,000 feet above, 500 feet below, 2 statute miles horizontal. Let me just confirm something. Okay. Oh, accidentally went to Bobby Lind. Anyways, So the reason why oh my gosh, sorry, one second. The reason why class Bravo or class Echo airspace is lowered is because you don't want people to be on IFR flight plans and now all of a sudden having traffic in class Gulf airspace just popping in and out of or just like weaving around these clouds with only like the bare basic weather minimums. So they lowered the class Echo airspace so that this instrument traffic coming in has higher protection or more ability to more distance to see and avoid VFR traffic. So that's why, like, for example, this class Echo airspace, the floor is lowered to 700. And then there's some other examples like this Visalia Municipal Airport, where I bet you that there's an instrument approach where planes are descending in the clouds on IFR flight plans to this Visalia runway right here. So they lowered the floor of the class Echo to, it looks like 700 feet, and then to the surface so that traffic on IFR flight plans will be able to safely make it to the surface of the airport without VFR traffic in class Gulf getting away with only being like 1 statute mile visibility and not being able to see and avoid that instrument traffic. Cool. And then really quick, I was just gonna hit military operations areas. So there's a whole nother chunk of airspace called special use airspace. So I'm not gonna have enough time to hit all of them, but really quick, military operations areas are these, it's like a magenta, I call it like a teeth, magenta zipper line or magenta teeth. And these military operations areas are areas where VFR traffic and IFR traffic, I guess, are supposed to be on high alert through those areas. It could be unsafe because they're doing like maneuvers or going faster than 250 knots. So you can actually go through a military operations area without a specific clearance, but it's probably not a good idea to go through while it's active. So like when the military is actively using it, or AKA when the military operations area is hot. So I would recommend, if you're going through a military operations area, to be talking to a controller. So in this case, I would probably contact Fresno Approach to get information about the military operations area. Or if you are on ForeFlight, if you hold your finger down on a military operations area, it'll pop up a tab that says information. And on that information page, it would tell you when it's in operation and who to contact in order to go through that area. Another special use airspace area would be restricted areas. And also, this is the same thing for military operations areas. If you have like a paper sectional instead of ForeFlight, if you look at the margins of the paper sectionals, there should be more information correlating to that specific like military operations area or restricted area. And I'm trying to find an example of a restricted area. But basically, restricted areas are areas where you need an explicit clearance to go through the area when it is in operations. So once again, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time finding one right now. But restricted, here's one. Restricted areas are when it's active, you would want to figure out who is controlling this restricted area. And I would honestly probably, I would probably avoid this area. However, if you do want to go through it for some reason, once again, I would contact, so if you have ForeFlight, I would hold my finger down on this restricted area and that little info page will pop up so you could see when it's in operation and who is in charge of it. So you could like reach out to them on that frequency. Or you could look up this R5701 and look it up in the legend on the sectional and find out more information as well if you don't have ForeFlight. And then we have prohibited areas, which.
So really quick on that restricted area, could we have gone above 6,000 feet and then flown over it? Cause it said like R5701 to 6,000. See?
Oh, this one, it says to flight level 200, which would be 20,000 feet.
But
So
right next to it, on the left, it says 5701 to 6,000. Right there, yeah, see this.
Yes, that is correct, yeah.
So is that 60,000 or is it 6,000?
It's 6,000, sorry. So flight level, this is more of an instrument thing, but flight level means above 18,000 feet. So you would just add, whenever you see FL, it means flight level, and you would just add 2 zeros. So it would be flight level 200 or 20,000 feet. Whereas this doesn't say flight level, so it's assumed that it's 6,000 feet.
Okay, so we could go over it. We just have to go up and over.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's actually a really great question. There's some other random airspaces that would be good to know. One is like a wildlife area. So if you see these little dots here, it means that it's a wilderness area. And generally, you are requested to fly 2,000 feet above these wilderness areas with the dots. Sometimes you'll see the same thing in magenta, like this line with the dots. And every once in a while, you'll see a wilderness area with a note next to it that has like a different altitude requirement than 2,000. But generally, you want to fly 2,000 feet over them. And then some other weird special use airspace would be a TFR or a temporary flight restriction. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with these. These are usually, so they're not going to be on like a paper sectional just because of how temporary they are, but you can see them easily if you get like a ForeFlight overlay or if you get a weather briefing, you can ask for TFRs because they're technically just NOTAMs. But temporary flight restrictions, they're basically like pop-up restricted areas, and they can exist for like wildfire operation. This one looks like it's for a very important person, which is exciting. I'm wondering if this one's for like the president. If anyone figures that out, please let me know. Or usually like big sports games will have temporary flight restrictions or TFRs around them. So those are NOTAMs. And then some other weird flight areas would be, let's see, around like DC, Washington, DC. There's a couple prohibited areas as well as special flight rules areas. So those ones you kind of have to like, well, prohibited areas, I'll find a good example for you. Those are just areas that you are not allowed to fly through, period. But special flight rules areas are areas usually of like special interest. Okay, I'm like once again taking the path of most resistance, trying to find Washington, D.C. I'm just gonna type it in. Washington Dulles. Okay, which of course is in a TFR. Okay, so a prohibited area would be, it's in a TFR right now, so it's kind of hard to see. But if you see this little area that says P56, this P means that it's a prohibited area. So you are not allowed to enter that inner circle in any case. And then once again, it's kind of hard to see because it's under a TFR, but if you see these little like jagged teeth with the white around it, it looks like there is a special flight rules area. So special flight rules areas, you just kind of have to like read the sectional and it'll tell you the information that you need. So for DC, for example, you need ATC communication, all altitudes prior to entry, and you have to receive, it looks like, special training in order to transit this area. I'm trying to find, there's a better example of a special flight rules area in Arizona. So let me take us down to Phoenix really quick and I'll pull that up. Phoenix Sky Harbor. Okay. So another example of a special flight rules area would be, if you see this white line, sorry, I'm jumping around, but this white line with the TAC chart means that when you see the TAC chart overlay for the zoom in of the Class Bravo airspace, that's like the section it's taking out. But I'm trying to find, oh, here. Okay, I take it back. Phoenix has special air traffic rule area. It's called a SATR. So you just kind of have to read the sectional and really pay close attention to make sure that you are adhering with their like special rules of that particular airspace. But that pretty much wraps up everything that I wanted to cover. I'm trying to see if I have better examples of like prohibited areas for you guys. I was thinking around like Area 51 or something. But while I'm pulling that up and before we wrap up, oh, sorry, here's another special flight rules area, or a special use airspace, I mean. There's alert areas, so it would be denoted or notated as like an A dash something. And that means that you just have to like pay special attention. It's kind of like a warning area. This specific one looks like it's because of concentrated student jet training. So it just says like, be careful, heads up, basically. So you'll see a couple of those around too. And if you wanted to get more information about a particular alert area, you can look up this A231 in the margins of the sectional, or just hold down on it on ForeFlight once again. But anyways, before I find anything else to bring up to you guys, does anyone have any questions before I wrap up? Any comments, notes?
I do.
Okay.
What are those bright red rings?
Bright red rings. I think these ones?
Yeah.
These are those TFRs that I was talking about, or temporary flight restrictions. So on ForeFlight, it's like a overlay that you can put on. But it looks like in Sky Vector, there are these bright red rings, and it tells you, so this one's from surface to 10,000 feet, and they all have like different times that they're valid for, different rules. So that's a good question. And just following through, I knew that there's a special flight rules area around here. Here's one for the Grand Canyon. So it has like specific instructions here for flying through the Grand Canyon. But cool. Any other questions before I wrap up? I know that this was a longer one.
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for bearing with me. I think during the middle, oh my gosh, trying to get out all this information, I was getting like tongue twisted. So thank you for bearing with me on that. But I am good. Kelly, I see your, I'm guessing your son. That's really cute.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good night, guys.
That's so funny. I didn't know you could see me. I'm sorry. I probably picked my
Oh,
nose
no,
a couple
you're
times on
fine.
here.
It's really nice to see your guys' faces too while I'm talking, because then I know if I'm like losing you guys on something or not. So,
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
bye guys. Happy flying.
Bye.
Bye. Don't know how to end.